Yo guys, it's JJ here, and today I'm going to be walking you through how to make a simple but hard Memphis beat. But before we get into the video guys, make sure to like, comment and subscribe. Just past 1k, aiming for 2k, so let's hit that goal. And before we start the video, I have just released a new kit, the Essential Kit, and if you want to grab it, all you have to do is go onto my Instagram, link below, and just follow the simple steps to get it. Absolutely free. First things first, for this Memphis beat, we are doing this at 130 BPM because you can find a range between like the 120s to the 150s really for Memphis kind of styles, but I would chose 130. And I'm doing this in the scale of a C sharp minor, as we can see over here. But the first preset, of course, is Analog Lap 5, and I'm using a preset called the Fluffy preset, but this is a bell, and of course bells are very common in Memphis beats, but as we can see over here, this is the pattern I've got laid down. It's nice, it's simple, and it's repetitive, and it's exactly what we want from a Memphis beat. To break it down, if we look over here, this pattern first of all is essentially the first 4 bar but just up an octave, so quite straightforward. But if we focus in on the pattern right here, as you can see, it's very much different to the grid. So what I did was go into the magnet tool, click it, go into 1/3 beat, and as you can see, this is how I laid my pattern down. And to break this pattern down, of course, it's very simple. Starting off with the C sharp, then using these 2 notes which are 1 semitone apart, and then of course up here, using these 2 notes which are 1 semitone apart, and then dropping it back down to the G sharp, and of course just copy and paste, rinse and repeat, and take it up an octave. And then finally, I clicked Alt R, pulled up this randomizer over here, and as we can see down here, I'm playing with the velocity just to give it a bit of variation. So without further ado, this is what the main melody sounds like. And there we have it, a nice, simple but hard Memphis melody. As for the effects, it was simple and straightforward. Got myself an EQ cutting off all of these lows. Then next up, I got myself some Valhalla vintage verb just to add a bit of reverb to the whole sound. And then of course, last but not least, stereo separated it around 30% as we can see on the top left. Next up, we have got ourselves an instance of Contact 7, and I am using the Bang de Noir Pure, using the preset Dark. And of course, it's just a piano, so if you don't have this plugin, or if you don't have this Bang specifically, any piano sound is really good. And of course, as we can see from the pattern here, it's a very simple and straightforward pattern. Again, fitting that Memphis aesthetic. All I do is start off with the root note of C sharp, and then I take it up a few semitones, a total of 7 to be specific, as we can see from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Then all I did was hold control, then using the left click, I dragged and I highlighted these. Then I click control up arrow, control B, control V, then of course just took it back down an octave, and then rinse repeated for the next octave up and the octave up. Now one more thing I did to this pattern, I clicked Alt S just to strum it a very slight amount, just a bit of air candy in a sense, make it sound a bit more human. And there you have it. So this is what the keys sound like. And there we have it. As for effects, it's again got an EQ cutting off all the lows, and again some Valhalla vintage verb. This is the preset I made for this piano. And next up, of course, I got myself another instance of Contact 7, and I'm using the F No World 6 Bank, using this Turkish female voices preset. And as we can see from the pattern, it's just 2 vocal phrases that I laid down. But if you guys don't have this, of course, you can go on Reddit, you can go on YouTube, you can find loads of free vocal phrases, so there are alternatives. And simply put, this is what the counter melody sounds like. And there we have it. So looking at the effects here, first thing I did was grab an EQ and create this kind of like telephone EQ, which is when you cut off all of these lows and you cut off a lot of the highs, just leaving some mid-range left, and that gives you that nice little telephone effect on the vocals. And then I got myself some reverb, of course, but as we can see here from the way I presetted it out, very high mix, very high decay, really drowning that sound in reverb, making it washed and extra dark. And then last but not least, I stereo separated this sound 100% in the mixer. The reason I've done this is if you have your headphones on, or if you're listening through stereo speakers, of course, you'll be able to hear how epic and how grand it sounds. And now for the final melodic component, I got myself a preset from Analog Lap 5, and I do not know how to pronounce it, so there you have it. And of course, looking at the pattern, it is very simple and straightforward. yet again. And that's kind of key with these Memphis beats, just keeping it simple, dark, repetitive. So let me just break this down. Looking at the first one bar, of course, it is just these 4 notes repeating over and over. And by these 4 notes, I actually mean 3 because it's a C sharp just replicated up an octave. Then, of course, making use of this G sharp and A, which are 1 semitone apart, to further give that dark sound. And last but not least, Alt R once again, just to randomize the velocities to give it a bit of variation. And for some context, this counter melody plays separate to the other counter melody, just a bit of variation in the sample and in the final beat. As for the effects of the sound, I got myself a nice little EQ, of course, cutting off all these lows. Then added some fruity chorus, very basic and straightforward. Some shaper box, as you can see over here. And I've got this nice little panning effect just to really give it a nice little bit of bounce. And of course some more reverb because we really want to give that ambient sound. And then of course I stereo separated again 38%, which you'll be able to hear if you have headphones in. So without further ado, this is what a pattern with a different counter melody sounds like. And there we have it, guys. But of course it's time now to get into the drums, and all these drum sounds are from my kit. Yet again, link in the description, but let's just move on. First things first, we got ourselves the basic snare pattern, very much known, very much common, so let's move on. Then next up, of course, we got ourselves the hi-hat pattern, very simple and straightforward. I'm using the brazy hat from my kit. And to break down this pattern, it's essentially a 4 bar, which repeats itself twice, making it a total of 8. So if we just focus in on this 4 bar over here, first thing I did was go on the magnet tool, go into half step, hold the right click, and then use your scroller wheel to scroll down onto this nice little paintbrush. So when you click a note, for example, and you hold and drag, you could just make these rolls. And by the way, around the 130 BPM, using the half step kind of rolls really sounds good for Memphis beats. So first thing I did, of course, starting off, I made a nice little roll here, simple and straightforward. And looking over here, I got myself another roll yet again. And if you realize, this over here and this over here is where the 808 would hit, because sometimes your 808s really hit harder when you have a roll going over them at the same time, and you'll be able to hit this later on in the beat. Then all I actually did was copy and paste this 2 bar over to make it a total of 4, but for the variation, I just took this note 1 semitone down. And then of course, I copy and pasted it over, making it a total of 8 bars. So without further ado, this is what a hi-hat and a snare sounds like. And there we have it. And of course, next up is the 808 pattern. Looking at it, it's very simple and straightforward. It's essentially just 4 bar, copy and paste it up 7 semitones, just like how the keys are. And as you can see, it's just this nice little pattern repeated over here, but then I just add this nice little extra note and this extra note over here. And the final thing I did to my 808 and to my kicks as well, I click Control A to highlight all my notes. Then using the scroller wheel, I click, and I scroll all the way up, just so I can max my velocities out. Reason I do this, it makes your 808 hit harder, same applies to your kick. It makes it much punchier and crisper in a mix. And of course, what artist doesn't want some banging 808s in their beats? And then of course, the kick pattern complements the 808 pattern, except it just follows the simple C note, of course, using the same notes. Without further ado, this is what the 808 and the kick sound like. And there we have it, super hard, super crisp, and as you can see, of course, maxing the velocity out really just takes it up another level. And now, of course, for the final 2 little extra bits that I added to the beat, first things first, the open hat. You can't have it hard, you can't have a really hard Memphis beat without an open hat, in my opinion. And what I did, of course, was just place the open hat every other measure, as you can see over here, and it just gives it a nice little extra Memphis bounce that we all know in these very hard beats. And then next up, I got myself another snare. And as you can see over here, I got myself a nice little snare pattern going on over here and here. And then got a nice little roll going in the end. And to make this roll and this roll over here, I go into the magnet tool, go into half step again. And if you can see over here, it's literally using the notes in the half step. Same applies over here. And then as we can see, I place a nice little half step roll at the beginning, place another snare, then the snare that kind of just drops down a bit, and then finishes it off over here. So now, without further ado, this is what a Memphis beat sounds like. there we have it. Super dope, super hard, super simple, and super easy to make. Of course, because you watched this tutorial by yours truly. But before we wrap the video up, let me just walk you through the arrangement of the beat. So, first things first in this beat structure breakdown, you start off with the intro, the first 8 bar of course, bringing in the nice repetitive melody. Whilst I introduce these drums, the very essential ones, which are the snare, the hi-hat, the kick, and the 808. And then I strip them out instantly yet again to create tension, but I introduce the snare rolls just to show that we're going to go into the chorus. Then next up, of course, the chorus, and it's 2 different 8 bars. As we can see, got my essential drums playing over here, got the keys now involved into the mix. But then for the second 8 bar, I introduced that nice little vocal counter melody alongside the open hat and those snares. But then coming into the verse section, first things first, looking at the initial 8 bar, I instantly take away all the melodies, apart from the new counter melody now introduced and the main melody. But then I just keep these basic drums in yet again. However, the kick is not involved, just because I want to kind of build up the tension. But then looking at the middle part, I actually strip out the main melody, introduce the keys, keep this nice little counter melody in for a bit of variation. Then I reintroduce the kick and the open hat that hits at the start of every 4 bar only. And then last but not least, the final 8 bar, which is what I like to call the pre-hook. This is essentially the 8 bar that happens just before the chorus, which is why it's called the pre-hook. And from what we can see over here, I reintroduce the main melody, of course. Then I introduce the keys halfway through, just to build a bit of tension, of course. And then looking at the 2 drums, I just have my kick and my snare playing to add a nice little bit of bounce and a build up. And of course, who can forget the snare rolls? So then again, coming to another chorus, 1 more verse section, and another chorus yet again, and another chorus yet again. So there you have it, guys. I hope you've enjoyed the tutorial. If you want to look at the beat arrangement again, you can just pause the video and just look how I structured it if you didn't understand. But then again, thank you very much for watching. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe. Appreciate all the love, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.